ChatZion, the city of cities when it comes to YouTube chat shows. We've got a big group today and we're going to do things a little bit differently and open it up for a bit of a free-form discussion on the topic of friendship. So welcome Amy, welcome Josh, welcome Rose. So, friendship and being a Christian, how does it work?
Well, I'm the oldest, I'll go first. I've had lots of friends. I still have lots of friends, and from different walks of life. I believe that, we, as Christians, we are part of the world, but not of it. We live in the world, and I don't think it's about being weird. It's just about having a different moral code. And right from school, I moved around schools a lot, and I learnt to make friends quickly. Otherwise, I would have had an extremely lonely childhood. And so I learnt skills into how to fit in. But even as a young person, I got saved when I was a little girl. I always had that little point of difference, and being brought up in a strong evangelical family, it was well supported at home. So I always had friends over. My family was very welcoming. My parents were very welcoming. And so I always had people come over. They used to come over and stay. In my generation, it was quite a done thing to sleep over at people's places. And so I'd go over to other people's places, see how their families lived, etc. And I just sort of knew that was them. And that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. And I was very strong even as a young person of what I believed I wanted to, how I wanted to live my life as a young Christian. And so I've had Christian friends and I've had non-Christian friends. Sometimes I've had more problems with my Christian friends than I have with my non-Christian friends. Why that is, I'm not sure. Maybe sometimes in church, this is a point that I find quite relevant, is sometimes we make friends with people in church life because we're taught to sort of be loving and very kind to everyone. Some people are drawn to us that we would not necessarily be friends with just on an ordinary personality basis. And sometimes those friendships can cause problems later on. That's where we learn to walk the love walk. But we don't always have to have a zillion friends, but we do have to be friendly. And I think Christianity is not about being weird. It's not about being so incredibly different. You know, you go out with some people do some things you wouldn't do. You just have standards. And I find that all my friends, especially the ones that weren't Christians, respected me and respected my standards. And we're not about to try and, change my mind or anything like that. But I didn't judge them. I think that's the whole part of being a friend. I accepted them, they accepted me. But if there were issues in their life that they were starting to come and talk to me about, then that's a different thing. They've opened that conversation.
Cool. Good stuff.
Go, Mum. Sorry.
Well, as for me, again, different generation. I grew up with school friends from primary school, such a young age. So I've known all my friends since 7. And so being a Christian would be different from their upbringing, but it was fun. They respected me and I respected them for who they were and vice versa. And good times, but also it was good to be able to help them in many ways, with advice and in a very positive way compared to how they look at it. But in saying that, in the teen years was a little bit off the rails, in being led into other areas that probably shouldn't have happened, but you go with the flow, I guess, and you got to experience life. Not everyone's like that, but I'm a very curious person. Well, was a very curious person when I was growing up. So those friends had a very big impact on that, my curiosity, and trying different things and parties and girls and lots of different avenues that weren't good, very worldly.
They weren't good.
No, they weren't good, but getting older and getting more mature about my life and where I stand was a bit more important to me, and and especially in my walk, was very important to me than live the life that they lived. So that changed really quick when I was younger, and I still was really good friends with them, especially through their crazy days, but I wasn't around as much. And I think with friends, it's important to have that relationship, especially for a long period of time, because it doesn't matter what happens. You can always go back and say, hey, if you're in any problems or whatever, you can come to me and talk about it, and the respect is there on both sides. So as much as it's been fun and challenging, and crazy adventures, but yeah, it's very, I don't even know how to end this, but but it's been good, and it's been a good eye opener, and it's made me grow up a lot quicker than probably, I don't know, I guess what I initially to be. So yeah.
Okay. Mine's probably very different. I always felt like the minority as I was growing up, being a Christian, and none of my friends seemed to know what a Christian was. When I was in primary school, I definitely wasn't ashamed of it. I used to bring all my friends to youth group or church, and I was quite, proud of who I was. But as I went into my teenage years and went to high school, it was a very different story. It was definitely more of a, you're kind of like an outcast. So, my proud self and unashamed person kind of got squashed as I was growing up. So it was, I guess that was a little sad that I didn't feel comfortable in society to tell people that I was a Christian, and kept that little voice quiet. So throughout high school, that was a bit challenging with friendships, because you wanted to be friends with certain people and you wanted to maintain friendships, but you didn't want to scare them away, and you didn't want them to think you were this crazy person. So high school was a challenge, and I made friends, but I'm not friends with them anymore. So that's saying something that when you're in high school, that's not your life. That's just a small part of your life. And I think now, going to different churches, I've realised there's actually a lot of Christians out there my age, and I never knew that growing up. I thought I was the only one. So I think just try to stay true to yourself, and read a lot of the good word, and be around people that support you. I'm very thankful that my family were always with me, so they always kept me together, I suppose. And I'm back, and I'm not ashamed now. In the workplace, it's different. With friends, it's sometimes hard, so I just try to plant small seeds. I don't like to go over the top. I know other people are very we've got to save everyone, and I'm all for that. I'm just not there yet. I'm not as
in good time.
Yeah. I'm not as open or as extroverted as other people. So in good time, I just like to try to be a good person to the best I can, and be friendly, and hopefully I'm planting seeds somewhere, and hopefully people will ask me questions. So
I think that's the lovely thing about my family, my children. Of course, we've got an older son, they've got an older brother too, it's different again. I think it's just so wonderful to see how God loves my children individually, loves us all individually, and works with us through our personalities, through our faults, our failings, our strengths, our weaknesses. And it doesn't matter that Amy, for example, is more refined than myself. I was brought up very quiet. I was brought up in a very English, children to be seen and not heard, very old-fashioned sort of thing, and that was fine. It was for quite some time. And but in saying that, both my parents were quite adventurous, outgoing professionals, very taking ground, and so I was shaped slightly differently too. I had to learn to adapt, and I had to learn to be not afraid to be by myself, and I wouldn't bend for friendships if they were doing something wrong. I'd say, no, I'm not doing it. And so I was probably I just had to make decisions because I had to live with me. And I wanted to be like that. It was my choice. And when I went nursing when I was young, I was 17 when I went nursing at a very big public hospital in Brisbane. I was thrown into a totally different world of professionals. And again, I'd been quite strongly persecuted for my faith, and I basically laughed at it. You know, it was like, it was quite, yeah, bring it on. And but I believe that the gospel is the power of God unto salvation. I believe what I live what I believe. And so I think my children would know, and I would hope that they would know that I am not a hypocrite. You know, I'm not trying to be perfect, but I love them passionately. And, you know, this is the truth. This is the truth. This is the anchor of our souls. And let's not lose that for anybody, any friendship, any dynamic, any job, anything at all. Let's not lose that one fact, that God is the strength of our life, and we're just passing through. You know, we're just passing through.
I think the good values was that when we were growing up was that good backbone, like the morals and that faith that we were brought up with. You know, it's definitely the core of our belief, and we've always, like, I know for me personally, I've always gone back to that because it's what I know. Every time I've always gone, all right, this is what I know, that's works best for me than the other side of things. So I think growing up in that environment has always helped me in every aspect of my walk in my life.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, you know what? I was also a daughter, and I've also strayed a little bit in my younger years, and I found that's exactly the truth. Is the fact that you come back to the strengths, you come back to where the fruit is. You know, to put it in a very Christian way of saying things, the world doesn't offer anything. You know, really. I remember when I was younger, you know, we go to other people's parties or whatever, and say, they'd come to me and say, oh, you've been drinking? I said, no, this is just me. I'm just loud and like to have fun. You know, I can have fun without alcohol. You know, I don't judge people to do, but don't try and push it down my throat. You know?
That's right.
Yeah. It's just the standard.
I think for me, I grew up with my friends quite differently to what the three of you probably would have done. With the fact that growing up, I was raised in a Catholic household, but from quite a young age, my personal relationship with Jesus was very, very distant until quite recently. But growing up with within my family and my friends, I grew up with lots of friends. I still to this day have a great deal of friends that I've picked up through school and through footies and through all sorts of weird and wonderful things. We just bump into people and have connection with them. And I'm a person who does that quite a lot, and I really like to be seen as a person who is a sociable person and makes friends with lots of people. And I think the difference then between the stories that you've all just shared and between me is that relationship with Jesus is something in my life that has changed quite dramatically, quite quickly. And my friends are very, very aware of that because they knew me and they grew up with me. And for some of my friends, like my oldest friend, I've known since I was born. And they've seen me before, they've seen me after. And to be able to be in a position where I can say that I don't think that has changed my friendship with any of those people, I think is a really important thing for me. Because you know, the changes in my life recently and the relationship that I've got with Jesus now is something that's really, really important to me. Just like growing up, the relationship that I have with all of my friends was something that was really important to me. And if one of those had impacted the other, that would be something that was very, very hard for me to deal with. And I'm so thankful that it didn't, because you know, most of my friends are all living far away from me. All these friends that I've had for a very long time, and they live in, you know, a different state to me now, and it's hard enough to maintain that friendship with them.
That's right.
Without changing something that's a bigger part of my life as the changes that I've made. But you know, and like Josh said, you know, I was a teenage boy at one point in my life, and you do some things that might be questionable.
Silly.
Yeah, silly.
We've all done it.
And I'm sure if any of my friends watch this, then they will go absolutely nuts on the comment section of this with a long list of those questionable, silly things. But, you know, that's part of growing up, and that's part of being a teenage boy. If you're a teenage boy and you don't do something stupid at some point, you haven't really done it properly, I think.
You haven't lived.
But they don't treat me any differently now than what they used to. And that to me is a sign of a strong, developed friendship, that they can know and they can see changes in my life and see that I have changed, but not treat me any differently for it.
There's still a respect there, isn't there? I mean, it's so important to note that God is not in the business of wrecking relationships. He wants to build relationships with us and then overflow from our relationship with Him to our friends and our loved ones, to enhance and to be in a relationship with them. It's not about dividing, it's all about encompassing. And that's the wonderful thing about Christianity. It's never meant to be divisive. It's the God who loved us all. It's the Saviour who saved us all. It's just, what do we do with the Saviour? And I think with my friends of growing up, it's always been about that. It's a love for them, and my love for my friends, for the ones I have now, saved or unsaved. It's all about enhancing their awareness that there is a God who loves them and saves them. The only difference between them and me is I believe.
To throw a spanner in that works, based on that comment, where would the boundaries be on friendships? When do you say, no, I've got to let this go?
I'd actually let the friendship go. Oh, there'll be a crisis.
So-
There's usually a conversation. Something will come up. I've had that happen.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
I think when they're leading or trying to peer pressure you or challenge your faith, I think you have to look at the friendship realistically. Are they adding value to my life? Are they sharing similar beliefs to me? Are they enhancing and encouraging my walk with Jesus, or are they discouraging it? And I think when they start to show a lot of negative signs, you have to really
you've got to cut it. Especially if they're being negative and probably making stuff up about you. You know, you see the true side in someone when things get a little bit rocky or pear-shaped, and you see their character for who they really are, and that's when you know this person cannot add anything positive to my life that will benefit me, and that's when you.
And I think that, you know, ultimately you want to see them saved, and you want to see them change in the way that your life has, but you've got to have a healthy respect for, you can't push them to do that.
That's right.
You know, and they might question you and they might ask questions, but then is it the point where they're asking questions because they're curious for themselves, or are they asking questions, or are they nagging at you or pushing you to try and turn you? And sometimes you might just need to sit and go, you know what, as much as I want this person to have the same things that I've got right now, it's not the right time for them right now. Maybe I'm not even the right person to do it. And you've got to be honest enough with yourself to go, all right, maybe it's not me that's going to be the person that affects this, or maybe not right now anyway, and just step back from it and let it go. And the opportunity might present itself again later. You know, we never know exactly what God has planned for us and exactly what He expects us to do and who He expects us to do it with or for. And, you know, sometimes we need to have a little bit of take a step back and not be arrogant enough to think that it's all on us all the time. And sit there and go, you know what, maybe God doesn't have you down as someone that I need to work on. Maybe you're
sometimes that's life too. Like, people go their separate ways. Yeah. And people like take different paths, and people grow apart as well. I mean, that's just a part of life. So if they later on go back to Christianity or whatever they find, I mean, I guess that's on a bit of part on us as well.
Yeah.
For playing that little bit of a role.
And there's that case, you don't know what you've got till it's gone, sort of adage that you can turn to, and someone, you know what, maybe the best way for them to get the point is for me not to be there, and then that's when they'll realise what I actually bring to the table.
That's it. That's true. That is so true. Yeah. Yeah, I can think of a few very close friends that I've had over the years, and obviously we all grow apart as we get older, have our own family, we become grandparents, etc., etc. Things change, but we know their heart, but your core values, especially as you get older, a lot of things, if you're being honest, get stripped away. You realise that time is shorter. You don't want to waste your time. You want things to have more value, more of a depth, certainly I do. And so I'm careful where I spend my time, and I'm certainly careful with who I spend my time with now. And while I love to be able to just hang and have some friends and whatever, I'm now at an age now where family is still extremely important, and the ones that God brings into my life for me to learn from and also to impart. Yeah, it's a big deal.
Alrighty, awesome. Well, that's going to wrap up this latest episode of ChatZion. So feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube, join us on Facebook, ChatZion. Send us any emails, chatzionmail@gmail.com. Likes, shares, comment, send us questions, give us any sort of feedback. We love it all.